To set the scene, I'm a 20-year-old guy from Southern Illinois, and this story unfolds back in December of 2018. I was 13 at the time, and like many teenagers, I often found myself at odds with my parents. After one particularly heated argument, instead of retreating to my room, I decided a walk in the cold December night might help me cool off. I had to sneak out though because my parents would never have allowed it. Quietly, I opened my window and jumped out into the frosty air. I've always had a thing for scary stuff, and living down the road from a prison mental health facility, I thought I'd give myself a good scare by walking past it. The walk started off well enough, but it wasn't long before things took a weird turn. The night had fallen silent, eerily so. Growing up hunting and spending time outdoors, I knew that such quiet was often a bad sign. I tried to convince myself that maybe the animals saw me as a threat, but deep down, I wasn't so sure. As I turned a corner, I noticed someone else walking. At first, I didn't think much of it, but as I got closer, I realized the person wasn't moving. They were just standing there, motionless. Fear gripped me, and I quickly turned around, picking up my pace to get home. After a few blocks, I slowed down, thinking I was safe. But then that strange feeling crept up on me again. I turned around, and to my horror, the man was about 10 feet behind me. At first, I thought it was just another late-night walker, but then I saw his face. A grotesquely wide smile and crazed eyes, red with just a hint of white. Panic set in and I bolted, my house still about a half-mile away. Glancing back, I saw him running after me, moving with an unnatural speed that defied belief. It was like nothing I'd ever seen before. His rapid footsteps echoed in my ears as I sprinted through the snowy streets. Miraculously, as I reached my neighborhood, the sound of his footsteps vanished. Gasping for breath, I crawled back through my window, only to end up throwing up from the exertion and fear. My parents were furious when they discovered I'd snuck out, especially since I hadn't closed the window behind me. They assumed my sickness was due to being out in the cold. What haunts me to this day is learning later that the man was caught. He had broken into someone's house and was found sleeping in a closet. He had escaped from the mental health ward during a transfer, attacking a nurse and a guard before fleeing. I shudder to think what might have happened if he had caught up to me that night. That terrifying December walk taught me a lesson I'll never forget. Some late-night adventures are better left unexplored. On a chilly December night a few years back, my buddies and I decided to take a drive in the northern Michigan area, down some old dirt roads blanketed in snow. We were all stoners at the time, enjoying a good high in the frosty air. Our destination was one of our favorite smoke spots, where an old abandoned barn sat on the edge of the woods, its structure partially obscured by the winter's heavy snowfall. As we pulled up, our breaths visible in the cold night air, we were talking about how Jay had just got this new bong he was excited about. We had this wild idea to try and hotbox the entire barn. Dumb, I know, especially in winter. You really can't hotbox a barn all that well. So as we were joking and laughing, we trudged through the snow into the barn, our phone lights cutting through the darkness past the barn door and into the stables. Next to the stables were some stairs leading up to the top floor, which had 2 windows on both sides of the building, frosted over with ice. We made our way up the creaky, snow-dusted stairs into the little barn loft. We sat and smoked for a few minutes when I noticed Ella was acting strange. To lighten the mood, I joked, "Hey Ella, why are you acting so different suddenly? What did you see, like a ghost or something?" Elle replied hesitantly, "I don't know, I just feel like we shouldn't be here." Jay, trying to be the voice of reason, said, "Why?" "We come here all the time. Just relax and take a rip. We'll go home after we're done with the rest of this weed." Ella seemed to agree. "You're probably right. I just need to take a big hit and I'll be fine." Jay passed the bong to Elle and packed a fresh bowl. Ella flicked the lighter and began to take a hit. While Jay and I were busy on our phones, suddenly we heard quick movement coming from outside the barn. It sounded like how a deer or a horse would run through a grassy field, but muffled by the thick blanket of snow. Elle got freaked out and said, "What was that?" Not knowing and wanting to smoke more, we just brushed it off, saying it was probably a deer or something. Curious, I walked to the windowsill and poked my head out to see if it was still there. There was nothing but the quiet, snow-covered landscape. I was kind of bummed that I missed the opportunity to get a pic for my Snapchat story. I went back and sat down with Jay and Elle, saying that whatever it was gone. Jay had a can of soda in his bag and poured it out to clear up his cotton mouth. As he poured it out, I began to realize that there were no bugs or frogs making noise. It was completely silent. Having grown up a hunter and being from the Chippewa tribe in Sault Ste. Marie, I remembered some of the things my family told me about the quiet woods. They say when the woods go quiet, that means there's a predator around. I asked Jay and Elle if they could hear anything, and they replied with, "Yeah, this bong bubbling." I started laughing, but then I said, "Anything else?" Elle's face went white, and he started getting tears in his eyes. He then said, "I think it's time to leave," to which I agreed. "Yeah, I think you're right. Let's get the heck out of here." We packed up our things, which probably took a total of 2 or 3 minutes. Still, the woods were silent. We slowly made our way down the stairs, our phone lights the only source of illumination. We made it out of the barn and walked to the car. Out of nowhere, we heard this sheep-like noise mixed with a low-pitched bass. I had never heard anything like that before, so trying to explain it might not make any sense. I started running for the car, not giving any warning to Jay or LA. I made it to the car fast enough to start the engine up and was waiting on them. Elle made it second, and Jay was trailing behind due to him being a bigger guy and also having a glass bong in his bag, so he couldn't run amazingly fast. I was looking at Jay heading up to the car through the rearview mirror when something further behind him caught my eye. It looked like a 6 to 7 foot tall devil with horns. It was a whitish gray color and was gaining on Jay fast. I slammed the car into drive, and Elle opened Jay's door so he could get in. Seeing this thing behind him, he threw his bag, knowing it was just slowing him down. But it didn't matter. It was faster than Jay and was gaining on him. We screamed, "Jay, come on, run faster." Jay made it to the car and slammed the door shut. I pushed the gas all the way down to the floor, kicking up snow and dirt. This thing chased my car down the little driveway and down some of the road before giving up and taking a sharp turn into the woods. During this time, Elle and Jay were screaming bloody murder, thinking we were going to die. I was paying more attention to the road and what was in front of me. While in a panic, I looked up in the mirror and saw 2 red, soul-piercing eyes staring back at me. After that, the feeling stopped. I didn't slow down one bit, though, hitting turns at a dangerous speed and breaking all speed laws. Eventually, we made it back to our little town, and I dropped them off, telling them to only tell your parents if you need to tell anyone at all, just for fear that people might think we were crazy. I managed to calm myself down for the drive back to my house and made it home without any problems, but I just couldn't shake the fact that I felt like I was being watched. I told my dad about it, and he said to never go back there again. "That's the territory of something you don't want to mess with," he warned. I hope that this can be a warning to you all that even if you have been somewhere multiple times, it does not mean it's a safe place. As a wild teenager, I had my fair share of close calls, but this one particular incident in December 2018 scared me to my core. I was at a friend's house one evening, indulging in the typical teenage antics of getting stoned and drinking. I was decked out in a white miniskirt, a glittery halter top, and knee-high white boots. I had layered up with a thick jacket and thermal leggings under my skirt, considering the freezing temperatures outside. Around midnight, I realized I needed to head home. No one was sober enough to drive me, so I borrowed a hoodie and some pants from my friend and decided to brave the 30-minute walk to my house alone. I'd done this walk many times before, but never at midnight, and certainly not in the biting cold of a snowy December night. The first 10 minutes of my walk were uneventful, passing the main intersection with no issues. But as I was about to turn the corner down the main road to my area, a large green van pulled up beside me. Being stoned and paranoid, my fingers automatically dialed 111, New Zealand's police number. As I dialed, a young islander man jumped out of the passenger seat, yelling at me to get in the van. The moment the operator picked up and I said, "Police, please," the man jumped back into the van and they sped off. I quickly told the operator what happened and hung up, needing to conserve my phone's battery for the rest of my walk home. Now I was terrified. The quiet, snow-covered streets seemed even more ominous. I started jumping into driveways and hiding behind bushes whenever I saw headlights. After about 15 minutes of this, I noticed a white sedan passing by multiple times. Dismissing it as my imagination, I continued my cautious journey. Reaching an empty paddock opposite the primary school, I saw headlights again. Thinking fast, I jumped over the 6-foot fence into the paddock and hid behind a massive tree in the middle. Moments later, the white Toyota sedan pulled over. 5 men jumped out, searching the street and peering over the fence into the paddock. I dialed the police again, frantically repeating my name, address, and location. The operator calmed me down enough to explain the situation. As I told her about the men seemingly trying to kidnap me, I heard police sirens in the distance. They drove past, and the men scattered back into their car and fled. I was in tears, thinking the police had missed them, when suddenly I heard a man's voice. "Hello, excuse me, girl, are you okay?" he called out. I hesitated, then peered out from behind the tree. "Yes? Are the men gone?" I asked with a shaky voice. He confirmed they had fled when the police passed by. He offered to take me to his house to keep me safe until the police arrived. I climbed the fence and followed him to his garage a few doors down from the paddock. He was a kind man, just working on his car. He offered me a warm drink and a cigarette to calm my nerves. After about 10 minutes, it was clear the police weren't coming, so he kindly dropped me off at home. That night, as a young, naive teenager, I realized how close I had come to a potentially dangerous situation. If it weren't for my paranoia and love for true crime, things could have ended very differently. As I lay in bed that night, unable to sleep, the eerie silence of the snow-covered world outside was broken only by the occasional distant howl of the wind. My mind replayed the night's events over and over. The van, the men in the sedan, their determined search for me, it all seemed like a nightmare. Yet the cold reality was that it had happened, and it had been terrifyingly real. The next morning, the world outside was a pristine white, the horrors of the night before buried under a fresh layer of snow. But the purity of the scene couldn't erase the fear that still lingered in my heart. I kept thinking about the men in the sedan, wondering who they were and what they wanted with me. The thought that they had been so close, that they had been actively searching for me, sent shivers down my spine. I avoided walking alone at night after that. The experience had left a deep imprint on me, a constant reminder of the vulnerability that comes with being a young woman. I became more cautious, more aware of my surroundings, always looking over my shoulder, especially on those cold, dark winter nights. I often wonder what might have happened if I hadn't been so alert, if I hadn't listened to my instincts. That night taught me the importance of trusting my gut feeling, of being aware of the dangers that can lurk in the shadows. It was a lesson I learned the hard way, one that I will never forget.